mute. There we go. That was Yo Boy Dirty. He's part of Outlaw Nation, a good friend of mine. One of Girly Girl's faves, I will say. I see we got Strange Suspicion in here. Hey, Pia. Hey, Bomb. He's always welcome to come up. Bareback 13, it says device not connected. They will need to connect their mic cam before you can add them to the stream. So your mic's got to be connected. If you connect your mic, you can come up. Anybody that wants to come up can come up. But I did drop the stream. Pia, if you want to come up and talk about your channel, you're more than welcome to. You don't have to show your face, but if you show any other body parts, I will track you down and at you. Okay, so Bareback, you're going to have to try again, sweetheart. Because it's saying not connected. So I'm not kicking you because I don't want to hear from you. I'm going to share the link again, just in case. Okay, I have a couple things I looked up. There's just, you guys got strange stuff going on in Oklahoma. As always, we want to say to CW, if you're out there watching, you are a hero. You are why this case is going forward so quickly and why the bodies are found. We have much love for you. To the families of Jillian and Veronica, we have much love for you too. Right now, there's just not a lot going on, and we're going to stay active. I've told you guys I'll go live every night. And, you know, my biggest thing is we got so many people out here that, you know, you look forward to the live. And I wish I had more on the case to release to you. The newest on anything is Lori Sue is trying to take Cad's ex to court to where she can have 2 24-hour visits twice a month, unsupervised. Let's not forget it's the same lady that pulled a gun. So we're just not going to have that happen. So the bat signal has been sent out to the ex. I definitely will talk to her attorney. I definitely will turn over the evidence of her pulling a gun on a county street, and I definitely would go to court with her. So absolutely 1000% would do that for her. So we pulled up a couple things here. Let's see here. This was just another Oklahoma thing that I found to be, obviously I watched it. And this was from earlier today, even. This was kind of a sad deal, I thought.
Yeah, Clayton Cowen is a fifth-generation farmer here in Blaine County, but up until 2 months ago, he was considered a suspect, accused of threatening to blow up this oil site.
I was accused of sending harassing emails to an oil company employee about blowing up their pipeline.
You laugh because it must sound so ridiculous to you.
It's funny saying it out loud.
A Blaine County farmer is now a free man after the sheriff's office admitted to arresting the wrong guy. Back in 2023, an oil company started receiving emails from a Clay Cowen threatening to blow up their pipeline in Blaine County.
They believed that the person was wanting compensation for his portion of the land where the pipeline was buried.
And just 1 mile from the oil site, property owned by this Clayton Cowen. Before deputies spoke to the local farmer, the DA issued an arrest warrant earlier this year. Clayton says he didn't know he was accused of anything until he read his name in the local paper.
Basically, I was guilty until proven innocent. And I never got one phone call or one visit from any law enforcement or investigator about this case. It just came out in the paper that I had a misdemeanor for a crime that I didn't commit.
Turns out he was innocent. A search warrant discovered those emails traced back to Pennsylvania.
It's really not clear how somebody named Clayton Cowen would address property in Blaine County where Clayton Cowen from Blaine County has a vested interest.
I've got upwards of $5,000 tied up in this case so far, and it's a lot of money for somebody that is innocent.
Clayton's charges were dropped, but now he's still working to clear his name.
I shouldn't have to clear it up, but I have to.
Yesterday, the sheriff posted an apology online, taking ownership of the life-altering mistake. Today, he told KOCO investigations will be more thorough moving forward to make sure that this never happens again.
It is absolutely paramount to me that we prove people's innocence just as much as it is that we prove the people that are guilty.
Today, I asked Clayton if he was considering taking legal action. He says right now he's not sure. The Blaine County Sheriff's Office says they are continuing to investigate these threatening emails and are working hand in hand with authorities in Pennsylvania. Reporting live in Blaine County, Kylie Thomas, KOCO 5 News.
That was interesting, wasn't it? He was getting charged for something that he didn't do. That's just horrible. Let's see here. I think it's this one. Nope, not that one. I found a couple different things I wanted to go over.
Hey, wonder Hussy here. Out in the middle of nowhere. And when I say the middle of nowhere, boy howdy do I mean it. Only it's not the same middle of nowhere that I normally travel around. No, sir, I'm all the way out in Oklahoma on the Great Plains, which if you've ever been to or driven across the Great Plains, you know there's a whole lot of nothing. And I would argue that this might be the most middle of nowhere place I've ever been, including Death Valley. Okay, I'm pulled over here at the side of one of the loneliest highways you ever did see, cutting right through the heart of the plains. But I pulled over here at this little roadside turnout with a very interesting monument that tells you just exactly how deep in the real middle of nowhere I am. That's right, I might think I live in the middle of nowhere because my house is on the edge of Death Valley, but I don't live in a place officially known as No Man's Land. Believe it or not, No Man's Land was the actual semi-official name of the last little corner of the continental United States to be quote-unquote civilized. Okay, back in the frontier days, what would eventually become known as the Oklahoma Panhandle was actually part of Texas. But when Texas joined the Union as a slave-holding state, per the Missouri Compromise, its northern boundary couldn't extend north of latitude line 3630. So this funky little strip of land between the borders of Texas to the south, Colorado and Kansas to the north, New Mexico Territory to the west, and the so-called Cherokee Outlet, which was basically a reservation where the government forced all the Cherokee Indians to the east, this little strip wasn't part of any state, and so it became known as No Man's Land, because it really was. Think about it. It was totally lawless. This was back in the 1880s, 70s. It says it was called No Man's Land until 1890. Golly, there was no rule of law out here, you know? Like, well, if you rode your horse down into Texas, you'd have to face the wrath of the Texas Rangers. And if you rode your horse up into Kansas to Dodge City, why then you'd have to face the wrath of U.S. Marshal Matt Dillon. And I guess more or less the same if you rode that way into New Mexico or that way into Cherokee country. Ooh, I hate to think what would happen to you if you rode your horse into Cherokee country. But anyway, if you stayed in that little sweet spot, which today is the Oklahoma Panhandle, why, you are completely free from the oppressive thumb of the man. There was no rule of law, and I think that's why there were a lot of desperados and outlaws and very, very, very bad hombres populating this desolate country. And when I say desolate, I mean desolate. There is nothing out here but miles and miles and miles and miles of prairie grass, which is looking kind of dry and parched. And there's a really good reason for that, because not only are we right on the boundary of no man's land, that sign said we are about to enter no man's land. I'm driving back from Arkansas after the eclipse, so I'm approaching from the east. I just hit, I guess, the eastern edge of the Oklahoma Panhandle, and so this sign says, you are now entering old no man's land. Well, it's also the 100th meridian. Okay, it says right here, the Cherokee outlet stopped at the 100th meridian, which today is the line separating Texas from Oklahoma. Like if you look on the map at the Texas Panhandle, there's like a very straight line separating it from Oklahoma. Well, that's the 100th meridian. Now, if you know anything about water and water rights and the whole conundrum of the eternal drought we find ourselves in here in the Western U.S., well, the 100th meridian might sound kind of familiar to you. It's the line that was identified way back in the 1880s, I think, by John Wesley Powell, the one-armed Civil War veteran who was the first white man to explore the Grand Canyon. Well, he was one of the first white men to really explore the West fully. And when he went back east to give his report to the president, he gave a talk in front of Congress saying, hey, guys, I mean, I'm paraphrasing here, but all the lands west of the 100th meridian are basically arid desert and unsuitable for large-scale agriculture. Remember that? It's a quote that's been coming back to haunt everyone in the West these last few dry, thirsty years. Well, basically, John Wesley Powell was right, and it only took another 40 or 50 years for his words to prove especially prescient. Okay, prescient is just a fancy word for, it was almost like he could see into the future, because wouldn't you know it,
I don't know.
even though John Wesley Powell told the fine gentleman in Congress that the lands west of the 100th meridian were unsuitable for large-scale agriculture, that didn't stop people from settling the West. No siree. In the finest tradition of American pioneers, they all loaded their wagons and headed west and grabbed as much land as they could in California, Nevada, Idaho, Montana, South Dakota, North Dakota, Kansas, Colorado, Oklahoma. And I guess thanks in large part to the railroads selling them all kinds of pipe dreams, well, a lot of them started small family farms in this arid,
like money,
waterless, treeless landscape. Now, you might think, golly, Wonder Hussy, who in their right mind could possibly grow anything in a dry landscape like this? Well, okay, there's not a lot of creeks and rivers, but there is a huge underground aquifer, the Ogallala Aquifer. You might have heard of it.
Right now?
It's this huge underground lake, I guess, essentially, under the whole Great Plains. And I can't remember how many 100 million gallons of water are thought to be in it, were thought to be in it. I mean, I'm sure they're already sucking it dry pretty quick, but yeah, thanks to that aquifer, all a homesteader had to do was build one of those
most of them are
really
going
charming little windmills
that
you see on, you know, the classic old farmstead with the little creaking, squeaking metal windmill. All you needed was one of those little windmills, and you could pump all the water you needed out of this Ogallala aquifer and water your cows, water your pigs, and water your crops. And again, you might think it's completely bonkers to even think about growing a crop on ground like this. I mean, this is like it's nothing but dead brush and, well, the odd bit of tumbleweed. Anyway, that's right. The magnificent, wild lawlessness of no man's land was eventually tamed and settled by farmers. So if you know anything about American history or Broadway musicals, if you've seen Oklahoma, well, I guess the reason it's called the Sooner State is Oklahoma was, well, it was this Cherokee outlet, but then I guess the government reneged on their deal with the Cherokee and moved them somewhere else. And so they opened up this whole Oklahoma territory to settlement. And I guess by that point, no man's land had just sort of been glommed onto it. And that's why Oklahoma has that funky pot shape to this day. See? Never say you didn't learn anything from the Wonder Hussy channel. Anyway, in 1907, I guess the government just opened up that entire chunk of land to settlement. And so there's some famous painting that some guy did of all these crazy land hungry, well, speculators and settlers just rushing to grab. I guess it was like first come, first serve. If you could grab your plot of land, well, then the government would give it to you as long as you promised to farm it, I think. And so people did. There's another monument over here showing, well, it shows here that we are in Beaver County. Don't laugh. And these are all the little towns that were settled by these settlers who got here sooner than the next guy and were able to claim some land and start a little homestead. I'm pretty sure that's why Oklahoma is called the Sooner State. So anyway, basically Oklahoma was the last territory that you could claim free land in. You know, think about that. The pioneers started going to California in the 1840s, 1850s, and boy, as long as you could drag all your stuff across the country and survive cholera and Indian attacks and, you know, starvation and dying of thirst, well, the land was yours for the taking, and folks back then got some pretty juicy properties. But, you know, as the decades went by, the 1840s, 1850s, 1860s, you know, then there was the railroads, so it was easy. Anybody could come out. Well, all the land got gobbled up. And so by the turn of the 20th century, the 1900s, there wasn't that much land left. And so if you wanted a stake of the American dream, Oklahoma was the last place you could grab a piece of land. And so I'm sure some of these Sooners, you know, Oklahoma is actually a very varied, geographically speaking, state. I just drove across it. I should know. The east side of Oklahoma is relatively green and lush, and there's lots of water. That's the side of the state on the other side of the 100th meridian. So if you grabbed land over there, you were good to go. But these poor folks who didn't get anything until they released no man's land, well, they were facing a pretty brutal existence. Okay, not only is it dry as a bone, it's also blasting windy out here most of the time, and there's no trees to cut down to build houses. These guys had to build their houses out of the dirt itself. I guess they would, well, because it's prairie grass, or it was all covered by prairie grasses naturally evolved to withstand these blasting winds. Okay, when there's like a 50-mile-an-hour wind whipping across this grass, it doesn't just get ripped up and fly out because it has a very extensive network of roots, I guess, like a really gnarly root system holding it into the earth. And that root system kind of held the dirt together. So when the farmers would cut these long strips of sod, they could chop them into bricks, kind of like making an adobe house out west, or I should say out farther west. But they didn't even bake it. They just cut chunks of wet land, and they had to cut it when it was wet because when it's dry, it's too hard to cut. So I guess after a rain, they would go through and they would cut these bricks and stack them up and build these actual sod houses out of dirt bricks. Oh, and I guess their patience paid off because the drought did eventually end. I think it started raining again in like 1936, and well, the government stepped in and did some kind of mitigating conservation core tactics. Like, you know, they taught people how to terrace their land, or I guess there's different farming techniques where you don't just strip off the topsoil. And they planted a bunch of trees. The government planted like 100 million trees as a sort of shelter belt to block the winds. I mean, maybe these could be some of the federal government's original shelter belt trees. I don't know. All I know is I've passed a ton of abandoned farmhouses driving through no man's land, and not all of them look old enough to have been abandoned during the Dust Bowl. So I thought it might be kind of interesting to stop and check a couple of them out. Okay, this is a perfect illustration of everything that went wrong in this part of the country. And it really does paint a classic picture. A dry well, a dried up farm, and dried up dreams. So during the Dust Bowl years, which I guess was roughly 1931 to 1936, I think those were the worst years of the drought, when these billowing clouds of dust were choking everybody out and they were all fleeing to California. Well, not everybody fled to California. There were some folks you know, they had sunk their whole life's work into building these. You know, first they built a house out of sod, and then once they got a little bit of money together, they somehow got the money to go into town and buy wood. You know, they were able to buy timber and then bring it back out and build a wood frame house. And a lot of them, you know, these wives, these poor wives, their husband dragged them out there from back east, you know, promising that they're going to make something of this land. We're going to have a farm, and don't you worry, honey, I'll build you a house. Next thing you know, she's living in a mud dugout. Well, don't you worry, honey, as soon as this crop comes in, I'm going to go to town and build you a real stick-built house. So they did. They built these homes, and they weren't just going to leave all that behind just because of a few years of drought. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 years of drought. Some of these people actually did hang in there. Like this abandoned farm I'm poking around right now, it doesn't look like it's that old, actually. I mean, you can see the house. That's definitely much newer than the 1930s. So this place must have belonged one of those hardcore pioneer families who decided to stick it out, you know, wait around. Eventually it'll rain again. And they did, man. They hunkered down in those dust storms and they ate. Golly, I was just reading a book about it. I mean, some of them were so hard up they had to eat tumbleweed, pickled tumbleweed, and their cows were all dying. I'm curious what's in this. This looks like a real old building. Look at that. It's like stone and mud in the cracks, and it's full of tumbleweed. I guess this must be a house that belonged to some of those people who decided to stay here and make the best of it. And so it looks like they stayed until, golly, I'm going to guess the 1970s, maybe even. I mean, this house doesn't look that old. We'll go inside and see if we can figure it out. If I can get over there. I mean, I have to walk over this giant pile of collapsed rubble, which it looks like that was the garage. Look at that. Some kid played basketball on that basketball hoop hung on the front of the garage. Boy, talk about evocative. If this place isn't the very depiction of American carnage, I don't know what is. Holy moly, look at this place. I mean, the windows do look old, but not 1930s old. I'd guess this house was maybe built in the, well, gosh, I don't know. Maybe it is. I mean, those old paint, well, there's a crock. Can't be that old. Oh my goodness. Wow-wee. I gotta be careful. It's gonna take me forever if I look at everything on the floor. I was curious how long ago this place was abandoned. It doesn't look like that old of a supermarket flyer. I mean, Campbell's chicken noodle soup was going for 3 for $2. I guess that was before inflation. Oh my God, look at the kitchen. Holy cannoli. This is just heartbreaking. I don't know, man. This place definitely looks like it was abandoned way later than the Dust Bowl. But oh my God, look at this living room. Holy cow. This recliner is just like somebody got up and left yesterday. And then look at this cool chair. It's made out of an old barrel. I mean, I wouldn't want to sit in it now, but wow, look at the cool quilted pattern on the back. Oh man, this place is full of mold, man. It's a different environment out here. You know, I'm used to exploring this stuff out in the desert where I don't have to worry so much about black mold. But in a place like this, it's a different story. Oh my goodness. Oh no, look, a typewriter. How about that? Somebody sat there working on the great American novel. I
don't know what
Grapes
this means, but I'm up
of Wrath. Golly, all joking aside, I wonder who sat here and what they wrote. Oh no, look, there's a picture. Could this be the guy who sat at this typewriter? Aww. Golly, what happened? Well, he looks like he's straight out of the 2000s, so I'm gonna guess that the abandonment of this place, oh look, his old Stetson box from his cowboy hat. The abandonment of this place happened way, 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 way after the Dust Bowl. But whoever that guy in that picture was, his parents or his grandparents probably lived through the Dust Bowl. Oh, look, Pootie Tang. He had fine taste in movies. Oh, no, look, there's his boot. Golly. Oh, man, look, no, all his clothes are still hanging in the closet. Absolutely heartbreaking. Okay, as fascinating as it would be to poke around the debris of this poor man's life, I gotta get out of here. There is too much rat poo, black mold, and God only knows what else in here. So let's go back outside into the fresh air. Bah! Woo-wee, wow, that was wild. I didn't expect there to be anything in that house. You know, I've driven past a number of abandoned farmhouses out here. They're all over the place. And most of them are just, you know, empty shells. That place was another story. Fascinating. It adds layers onto this. You know, when I started making this video, I was just thinking about the people back in the 1930s, but it's true. Their descendants hung on here for decades. And it's sad to think what happened to that guy and why he eventually gave up, you know? I mean, I think the drought ended in like 1936. So it started raining again, and then the government had stepped in and helped them plant trees to block the wind and taught them these new farming techniques. And so I guess things kind of just went back to normal. In fact, I read online even that the price of wheat went back up, you know, decades later.
What do you mean she's talking bad? I mean, she's just telling a story. That's her channel. I don't understand.
And so some of the farmers started pulling out them trees, and the government planted 100,000 trees.
Might not be correct.
To block the wind. Well, some farmers started pulling them out because it was more profitable to plant more wheat. Okay.
Yeah, it's all over. I mean,
it's another.
It's one of them things. Either you're a fan or you're not.
Farmstead, just on the other side of the highway.
It's almost over, but it's one of them things. Either you're a fan or you're not. I wanted to show this stuff still sits out there in no man's land. They've got, it looks like junkyards out there. It's the truth. I saw it.
And it looks to me like the house probably dates from the same era as the other one. But dang, look at this building. I mean, this looks like it really could have been here
like you can leave
since the days of the Dust Bowl. Let's see if we can go in. Oh man, look at the amazing way it's closed. Holy wow. Okay, well, I guess it's not that old. Oh, it's got that same kind of big built-in sink like that other building. Maybe this is like the pump house where they got their water. You know, there's a big plumbing pipe there. This might be the yeah, look. On the electrical, the well. So maybe this is what failed and caused this poor farm to dry up. I mean, they weren't able to suck any more money out of that delicious Ogallala aquifer. Wow, look at this. It's just
exactly
straight out of a freaking movie.
Land. I couldn't believe.
I mean, again,
and that's not trying to
probably not from the 1930s, but
this is really what's out there.
Long thereafter. Let me zoom out. See what's in this one. Oh, I don't know. This place looks a lot newer.
Me
the
too.
Couch.
I watched her.
The recliner.
I'll knock it down.
Shag carpeting.
I shared her link. I'll share it again.
Okay, wow. There is so much interesting stuff in here.
It goes all over.
I don't have time to poke through everything. No matter how evocative a picture it paints. I could just picture the farm wife baking a bundt cake there in this sunny, spacious kitchen that unfortunately now is just a complete friggin' disaster. Oh my god, there's like a little baby stroller, like for a kid to play with. They had kids. Oh dang, look over here. You can see all the way down into their basement. What do you call it when you go hide from a tornado? Tornado bunker. Oh gosh, what's in here?
On the screen there.
I mean, if you can see through all the tumbleweed, there's some kind of real old-timey exercise bike.
Yeah,
oh, she's trying to stay fit. I love that. Anyway, these folks, I'm guessing, are the descendants. Let's see, if the Dust Bowl happened in the 30s, these are probably like the children of some of those farmers.
3 minutes left.
Oh my gosh. I totally had these fake farm animals when I was a kid, like these exact ones. Funny how certain things pop out at you. Oh no, look, here's the kids' room. No wonder that little pig was laying down there. There's a real crusty stuffed animal. There's a little toy horse. And there's even a little sweater hanging on the door. That is so heartbreaking with the little winter hat. What happened? Why did these people leave everything here?
Right there, deeper.
Golly, you can definitely tell there was a woman living here, though, because look, she even left her hot rollers behind. Oh my God, look at that. There's still even little bits of her hair on it. She was blonde. Wow. Okay, I've never seen anything like that in an abandoned place, but it does. I mean, it really paints a picture of this woman, you know, stood in front of this medicine chest, which her husband was shaving with Old Spice, and you know, did her makeup.
Okay, Sheila,
did her hair.
Right now, you make one more comment.
Oh, this is deodorant. I thought it was hairspray. And so, yeah, those hot rollers date from like the 1980s or 1990s. If you look at the bathroom, Look at the way it's constructed. This is a really old house. I wouldn't be surprised if this house was around during the Dust Bowl. So, yeah, maybe the people who lived here were descended from the original Dust Bowlers, I don't know what they called them, Dust Bowlers. Their parents lived here and they didn't want to leave, even though they were choking on dust and the fields were all dried up and the government was coming in and planting all these crazy trees. They had sunk their whole life savings into this area, and so where else are they gonna go? They stayed. And so their kids grew up here and really didn't know anything else. And maybe the kids hung on through the 1970s, 1980s, those Farm Aid concerts. Maybe they got some help from the government. But eventually, I guess that well went dry. Something happened. You think about the Dust Bowl as being ancient history,
crap.
something that ended a long time
Hit the
ago.
wrong button.
But in a way, it's a story that never really ended.
Sorry,
And as
Wayne.
long as folks continue to settle the arid half of the United States west of the 100th meridian, it will be a never-ending story. The never-ending story. Actually, I can think of a better song to sing since I'm leaving Oklahoma today, and I've been driving around the last couple of days in this beautiful no man's land listening to Woody Guthrie because, well, he wrote some of the most evocative folk music of the Dust Bowl era. Well, he had this one song in particular that I think will be very fitting to play or sing as I'm driving out of here. And that is, so long, it's been good to know ya. So long, it's been good to know ya. So long, it's been good to know ya. This dusty old dust is driving me home. So I'd better be drifting along.
Yeah. So if I play stuff you don't like, instead of making horrible comments, just turn it off. Because I don't care, honestly. To come up with something every day to try to show you, and I didn't mean to ban Sheila, but it should have changed to a timeout. But if you're going to come in here and I'm showing something that's a creator and you're going to put them down, and Winnie Keith, you said nothing wrong. I zapped the wrong thing. That's on me. I'm one-eyed. Yeah, I agree. They treat the land. Nobody's trying to dog you. But have you been out there? Do you live out there? All the trash and cars and that one place that I went that I did get permission. All these oil containers, plastic containers just laying everywhere. Yeah. That's what that is. So, but listen, I'm not here for fame and fashion, and I'm not here to make money or anything like that. So, I'm also not here to put up with no garbage. So, you're warned twice, 3 times, you're done. That's right. If you don't like the story, turn it off for the night. Go watch something else. She has a pretty big channel. She goes all over the world, so you're welcome. But see, there's some people that liked it, so it is what it is. Can't please everybody. It is crazy how things end up, I'll tell you. Listen, I sit back and watch history channels. I watch travel channels. We have people on here clear in the UK, all over the place. So, with that said, maybe they want to see what it looks like. No, it was the big Dust Bowl. Here, we'll talk about it. We'll talk about it because I have that too. I think it's this one. I think it's this one.
sadness for what it's become.
I'm not going to
It was
go
a
through
good
the whole
place to
thing.
grow up. A lot of good friends, a lot of good times. Raising my family here was, I wouldn't do it anywhere else. You know, if I had to go back and do it again, I'd do it again right here.
Just a mile off historic Route 66, tucked into a lightly traveled corner of northeast Oklahoma, lies the remnants of a town
This is on
deemed
the other side
environmentally
of Oklahoma.
uninhabitable.
Earlier, I told my own two children, I said, you need to watch what happens because you're never going to see this again in your life. Towns just don't disappear.
Maybe you've heard of the town, maybe you haven't. But one way or another, there's more to the story than meets the eye.
Yeah, I'm just going to play a little bit of this, but I want to say it's called Picher. But it was a town in northeast Oklahoma, and a chemical got in there, and a bunch of people was dying, and there's just really no town left.
Disenfranchisement, bitterness, and an unquenched longing for life as it used to be.
I just want this story to be our side of the story, what we actually went through as a family and a community.
What would it take for you to leave behind the only place you'd ever called home?
Most people never have to face that. They either leave by choice or they never leave at all. But what if you didn't have a choice?
I'm Parker Thune.
And I'm Baylor Hurst.
And this is the story of Picher, Oklahoma.
This was a sad story if you go and watch the whole thing. It's obviously not in the Panhandle, it's on the other side of Oklahoma, but this is really sad. I'm going to try to skip through a lot of it, but it's going through Oklahoma in general. No, it was the Dust Bowl. They left because of the Dust Bowl.
It's 6 a.m. on a Friday morning in September. As the sun rises behind dreary clouds, we're on the road through the heartland. Our destination lies in the far northeast portion of Oklahoma, 1 mile from the Kansas border and 12 from the Missouri border. It's an old mining town called Picher, the former epicenter of the Tri-State Mining District.
So I've been around mining my entire life. And one of the interesting things is that a lot of people just don't know that the Tri-State District exists. They don't think of Oklahoma as a mining state. They don't know about Tar Creek.
Robert Nairn is a scientist who specializes in ecosystem restoration. He's been working and studying the environment in Picher for over 2 decades.
So the Tri-State Mining District was one of the greatest lead zinc mining fields in the world in its heyday. Mining began in Oklahoma in the 1890s. Really came in about 1914 when the Great Picher Field was discovered. So it became a tremendously important producer of lead and zinc. And the folks that grew up in that corner of Oklahoma and Ottawa County like to say that they mined the lead and zinc that won the First and Second World War. And there's truth to that. They did. That was how important this mining field was.
But 5 decades later, mining operations in Picher had run their course.
Things had begun to wane. Ore prices had changed. The extent of mining, the amount of mining that was going on decreased. So by the 1960s, it was essentially a played out field. And there were very few mines that continued through the 1960s. So that by 1970, everything was over. The pumps that had kept the mines dry for all those decades of mining were shut off about 1970.
And that's when things took a turn for the worse in Picher. The groundwater seeped back into the shafts and absorbed an acutely toxic cocktail of chemicals.
Tar Creek, which had been a clear stream when things were pumped over time, very quickly turned into an orange stream laden with iron oxides and all the other things that went along with it.
It didn't take long for residents in the area to realize that something had gone catastrophically wrong with Tar Creek's ecosystem.
Their experts, EPA's experts, and everybody else's came. And they did some work, and they plugged some wells, they did some things.
How many people knows about this? Do you know about Picher, Oklahoma? And how the town just totally went away because of the chemicals? I'm just curious, because I didn't.
Try to stop Tar Creek running orange.
And it wasn't just the water in Picher that posed a threat to human health. So too did the huge piles of mine waste or chat that had accumulated around the town.
Yeah, I did not know about
Dozens of piles, some hundreds of feet high, contained hazardous dust and airborne toxins.
It wasn't until the early 1990s that the Indian Health Service did a survey of children in the watershed and found that 35% had elevated blood leads. So that was not necessarily a drinking water related lead exposure. It was an exposure to lead in dust and some in the solid form.
And what they found was not only Indian children, it was much, much worse and much broader.
Meanwhile, the EPA had long since decided that Picher simply couldn't be saved.
The bad water continued to pour out into the streams and was deemed by the Record of Decision in 1984 to be irretrievably damaged by past mining practices, and therefore it wasn't treated. So there's a legal definition in Superfund under CERCLA that they could use a fund balancing waiver. It says it costs too much to fix the problem, so they're not going to fix it. And that's essentially what happened since 1984.
The end was near for Picher. By 2009, after a mass exodus spurred by 2 rounds of federal property buyouts, the town had officially been disincorporated. In the eyes of the government, Picher, Oklahoma, no longer existed.
So crazy.
It's a very hard thing to think that the landscape around you that you grew up playing on, that was your whole vision when you looked out the window, was actually harmful. We all knew it was dangerous, but nobody really put together that it was dangerous when the dust blew, when the wind blew, that it could be dangerous.
There you go, Winnie Keith.
Now,
Sorry
more than
about that a while
later,
ago.
Most of the town's infrastructure has been torn down, and little remains of Picher beyond the huge chat piles rising out of the horizon.
I just want you to know, you're going to see some pretty chilling stuff.
Okay. Though Parker has visited before, I've never been to Picher. And as we turn off Route 66 towards the ruins of the town, what I see shakes me.
Oh my God. See, there you go. You can see that big pile.
It's massive.
Get ready to take this in.
Yeah, sorry, Weenie. That's an accident. That's on me.
How do they get that high? Is it like landfill? Did they move it there, or is that a natural build?
That's 50 years of mining right there.
It's like what you imagine Egyptian sand dunes would look like.
Now that we've arrived, I want to get a little more clarity on the state of the ecosystem here in Picher. So my first order of business is to meet up with Nick Shepard, who works in water remediation throughout the Tar Creek area. What exactly are we looking at right now?
So this is what we call a passive treatment system, and we're treating mine drainage. So mine drainage is basically the water below us, or mine workings. When the pumps shut off after mining, the water recharged from groundwater, refilled, and during that process, because of some chemistry underground, you kind of get a bunch of dissolved metals.
Okay.
So discharge here, just naturally under pressure, we get a lot of contaminated water. So the goal of these passive treatment systems is to basically remove those metals before it goes into any receiving stream.
As Nick explains his systems, a sputtering rain begins to soak us. It's a little ironic. As we're examining some of the most contaminated water in the world, some of nature's purest water is falling on us from above.
So these are different process units, each one kind of designed to target a different metal or different process that we're aiming to do. So once we do that, then we can actually remove those metals one by one or in groups and discharge clean water. Basically, our goal here is to drop out the zinc and lead in particular. Everything's kind of being sequestered. Iron's mostly up front, but getting the zinc and lead out.
And before we leave Nick's remediation site, he helps us dispel a couple of popular environmental myths surrounding Picher and Tar Creek. Myth number 1, the contaminated water is completely uninhabitable for wildlife.
So if you go to Tar Creek, and even in Picher around Tar Creek, there's fish there, but not as many fish as you would see in a similar stream in a different part of the watershed. So the mining impact, just like everything else, there's sensitivity in the biology. Some fish are really sensitive to pollution and some are tolerant.
Myth number 2, the water in Picher is harmful and corrosive to the skin.
I read a story about kids who would go swimming in swimming holes in Picher, and they would come out thinking that they had a tan, but it was actually chemical burns. Is there any validity to that?
It depends on the time frame. Water chemistry's changed a lot from back in the day, but odds are what it was is just the iron oxide thing. That orange water, it's just rust. So you can see I have it on my hand too. It's just iron. It's nothing bad, and it obviously doesn't burn.
And as we say goodbye to Nick, he mentions a particular bridge in Picher where we can actually witness the pollution take effect.
You have Tar Creek coming in, and then on the right is an older channel that's known as the old Lytle channel, Lytle stream. And that's where we have a lot of discharges. So you'll see clear water and orange water coming together, especially at low flow right now, on the other side of the bridge where you get the orange. So that's where Tar Creek, everyone knows that's that orange stream. That's really where it becomes the orange stream.
Once the rain subsides, we set out in search of the bridge. When we finally find it, the sight is absolutely stunning. On one side of the bridge, the water flows clear and serene, but by the time it reaches the other side, it's loaded with toxins and chemicals.
So, I mean, look, you can see right here where the orange water, the contaminated water flows into the perfectly clear water. And right there, Baylor, like you were talking about, where the polluted runoff meets the water, you see you got bright orange coming in contact with the clear stuff. This is what it comes out looking like on the other side. Tar Creek is aptly named because that stuff is closer to tar than it is water. As we prepare to sit down with some of the former residents of Picher, I've made arrangements to meet up with Jeff Reeves, the former Picher fire chief. With the rain sputtering on and off, we don't want to leave our cameras out in the elements, so Jeff shows us to one of the few buildings in Picher that still has power.
We're sitting in the old Picher Elementary School. Anyone that grew up in Picher came through this school in my generation. This was, in particularly, my third grade classroom all those years ago.
As the rain continues to fall, Picher natives drive through the storm from miles away, and one by one, they trickle into the school to give us their accounts of the town they'd called home, basking in the nostalgia as they sit down at the dusty desks.
I was born out on Spring River, east of Miami, and it would have been ruled out of Miami. But I went to school all my 12 years here at Picher. Then we moved back here in 70, I believe, or 71, and ran a little grocery store first, and then went into a business at a service station, kind of one stop down the state line.
We were here 12 years, would have been here forever if things hadn't changed. But we were here for the 12 years. Our boys were in the 5th and 7th grade whenever things changed quickly. I lived in Picher up until the buyout. I actually was part of the buyout. I had built a brand new home 3 years before the buyout talk started. So, and actually they relocated my home to an area outside of Quapaw also in another area.
They all agree on one thing. The community in Picher was one of a kind.
We all kind of bonded as a family around here. We all hung out together and everything. It was your basic small town, I suppose, but we really got along good, all of us mainly.
If you had a need, we made it work. And if I couldn't do it personally, I would go to find someone else who did, or an organization or the fire department or somebody. We'd make it work. That meant food, clothes, shoes, transportation. It didn't matter. That's what made us a family. My childhood was amazing. It was great. We were just one big family. I mean, you didn't go anywhere that if you did something wrong, somebody was on the phone calling your mom and telling them.
Being able to just pretty much walk into anybody's house on any given day that I was friends with. And if you were hungry and there was food going, they set you another plate. Well, hi, Brian. You hungry?
Another common denominator among the residents is an appreciation for Picher's unique landscape.
The chat piles were our playgrounds, and in the wintertime you went sledding, and in the summertime you ran them to condition for athletics or whatever, or just to play on them.
With the chat piles, if we got good snow, it was great. We went sledding on them chat piles. So we always look forward to it being an icy packed down snow.
Little boys who played war and all that, we'd make our little forts in the chat and just play and romp around on the chat piles. And then in the wintertime, you get a piece of tin or a cardboard if you didn't have money for a sled. Walk up the chat pile and slide down, It's terrific for doing that.
We played on the chat piles our whole life. We slid down the chat piles in the wintertime. I'm sure we probably ate some along the way, and I don't know, but yes, we actually, the Little League baseball field had a big chat pile right beside it. So when I have two younger brothers, and when they would go play Little League baseball, the kids would climb up on it, and every once in a while you would hear the announcer say, "Kids, you have to get down off of the chat pile now."
I had a cousin. I have 2 cousins, 3 actually. All 3 of them are dirt bikers, and their kids are now too. And they tore these chat piles up.
As the town's former residents catch up with one another inside the school, I venture out with Brian Miller to explore the town.
Right here used to be one of the hangouts where this concrete slab is. This was D&D Drive-In.
It's hard to believe there were ever houses here.
Oh, yeah.
Being here for the first
Everywhere
time.
there was houses. These were nice mowed yards. That's still in the tree from the tornado.
Brian's comment jogs my memory. The tornado. In May 2008, an EF4 cyclone swept through Picher, killing several people and leaving cataclysmic damage.
My husband was on the mower, and a page came, or actually the chief came across the radio, and he said, "You guys need to head to Picher right now. It's bad." And the chief never gets upset. He never gets stressed out or anything, but you could tell in his voice that something big was coming.
I'm going to have to get off here, but we're okay, okay? All right, bye.
It's the most helpless feeling you'll ever have. Until people see those large vortex tornadoes up close, they don't realize how intimidating and devastating they are. But it's the most helpless feeling I've ever had in my life, because there's just absolutely nothing you can do.
You could see the black, and I mean, it was huge. It was ginormous.
We came flying back and was able to get over here, and yeah, there was nothing there. That was up on what we call the heel, up south of Picher, but it was gone.
But we just went to work, trying to save people's lives and trying to get them out of the debris and different things. We went to work.
Oh, wow. I was shocked at what some of the stuff I saw. Mainly, like, seeing a 4x4 truck in a tree, and not just one, lots of them, like they were matchbox cars. You've seen that all down the road. Cars and trees, cars, just in unbelievably places they should be.
This was just a dirt back road. They didn't pave that until a long time later. But the tornado come right through here. That's why all these trees go to the right. Trees are gone. See them damaged over there.
Mm-hmm. For a town that was already struggling to survive, the untimely natural disaster amounted to a death knell.
That was really kind of the nail in the coffin. The buyout was in the works, but it was a slow process. Houses were gone, and then it was very quick. People were forced then to go other places, and things really changed after the tornado. I mean, then everything was really done.
The community as a whole after that was pretty much anybody that had planned on staying, which my parents were one of them, that was not going to take the buyout. They were, in their 60s, and they were content where they were. They were going to stay, but it completely destroyed their home. Anybody that hadn't decided or made up their mind officially to move after that, I think that was the last straw.
Throughout Picher's history, there was always one thing that brought the entire town together. Like many small communities in Oklahoma, the entirety of Picher lived vicariously through their high school sports teams. The Picher Cardin Gorillas were the pride of the town.
And here you go. Heyman Field. This is where the whole town was every Friday night in the fall.
It's been nearly 15 years since Heyman Field hosted its last game, but it still seems to percolate with some semblance of life.
I have to imagine for a small Oklahoma town that revolved around football, as most small towns in Oklahoma do, this was more or less an escape from everything that was going on in the outside world. And if you look around, that's the sense you get. Standing right here on this field in Picher, look around across the horizon and everything seems normal. There's nothing eerie. There's nothing frightening about this scene even today.
And as I step into Picher Cardin High School's old field house, it's almost a spiritual experience.
So obviously here in the field house, it's fallen into disrepair. There's paint peeling off the walls, everything's decaying, birds have overrun the place, but it's still standing. And in a town where so many of the structures have been torn apart or moved, I think it's very reflective of this town's identity, the fact that the athletic complexes are still in place, because the reality is in this town, everybody was a gorilla. The athletics at Picher Cardin High School were something that the entire community rallied around.
And as I walk around the venue that was once known as the Gorilla Cage, I can't help but take note of how appropriate the mascot really is.
I think the gorilla is a pretty perfect emblem of this town, at least when it was in its heyday, because, you think about what this town was built on is miners, right? Man strength. Those are physically strong people, and the gorilla is a very physically strong animal.
Meanwhile, as I continue to look around in the vicinity of the high school, I come upon a startling discovery. Tucked away in what appears to be an old wood shop are several boxes loaded to the brim with athletic plaques and trophies.
There's a trophy from 1958. Here's a trophy from 2002. That's almost half a century of town history right here on this table.
However, there's one trophy that's conspicuously missing. It currently resides under lock and key in the Baxter Springs Heritage Museum just across the Kansas border. But fortunately, the achievement that it signifies is also represented by the town's most revered monument.
Now, this stone gorilla may be the most iconic item left in this town. It commemorates Picher Cardin's only athletic state title.
In 1984, the gorilla football team went 15-0, capturing the 1A state championship.
The championship run wasn't by any means unforeseen. Heading into the season, the players knew that they had a legitimate shot at glory.
came together and had a great coach, great defense. And after our junior year, we realized that we're going to have a good season. Everybody expected us to go to state, at least go, if not win.
Our team, we started playing ball together in the 3rd grade, and there weren't very many move-ins or move-outs. And we just played together from the 8th to 3rd grade. And so you just have all that continuity all the way through. We knew we were pretty good as sophomores, juniors, and we thought we had a chance.
And as the season began, head coach Chris Collier, who was just 29 years old at the time, pushed the Gorillas to strive for greatness. As his players recall, Collier was never satisfied with their performance, even as they racked up blowout win after blowout win.
Early on, we thought Coach Collier was crazy because we ran, I cannot tell you how many sprints we ran. But we didn't play in the second half. I mean, the game was over by then, you know?
We just beat down a lot of our local schools. I mean, we didn't even get scored on until the 6th game of the year.
You know, I can remember back when we won a football game by 48, 50 points. Coach Carter takes us back on the practice field the next Monday and lines us up, and we have to run like 40-40s because, you know, we didn't play as well as he expected us to. And
I was 29 years old. So, yeah, I was pretty hard on him. I probably wouldn't be that hard on him now if I hadn't, because just the experience I have with it. But, yeah, being 29 years old and then being 17, 18 years old, yeah, I was pretty hard on him.
The Gorillas rolled through the first 14 games unchallenged and utterly dominant, but the 15th and final game of the season pitted Picher against Fox, the #1 team in the state. A single camera tape of that fateful night in Bristow has been preserved. Though it's old and grainy, it's the only existing footage of any game from the Gorillas' 1984 season.
We went in super confident, and I think the reason we were so confident because we had played so long together.
We knew we were pretty special. Didn't know how special until we got towards the end, and then we started looking at film at Fox and thought, oh boy.
That's the #1 team. They just put a whooping on people. We had a great offense, but our defense was what was so special. And they had this offense that was just incredibly talented, big, fast.
They still have the record in 400-meter relay in the state of Oklahoma. And they were the leading scorer in the state, Class A.
Every bleacher was filled, and they were 4 or 5 deep on the sideline. I can remember getting hit on the sideline one time and running into 2 or 3 people on the track. There were so many people there.
That crowd included legendary University of Oklahoma coaches Barry Switzer and Merv Johnson, who were there to scout Henry.
First kickoff, we run a reverse, and they were so fast, they got down there, and we're on the 4-yard line, our own 4-yard line at the very beginning of the game. And so our first play, I knew that they were going to key on shell. So first play of the series, we ran a trap with Sammy. He breaks about 55 yards, 60 yards.
I think the turning point of the game was the first play of the game when Sammy went 50 yards. I think that set the tempo for the game.
Sam Freeman's 51-yard run kicked off what would become a first-half firefight. When the two teams headed to the locker rooms at halftime, Fox led 21-16, and the two teams had combined for over 400 yards of offense.
Fox was a second-half team. They had been winning 14-7 at halftime and come out and beat the team 70-7, you know.
But when the Gorillas returned to the field in the second half, what they saw invigorated them.
Then we walk out the locker room and it's raining. Fox had never played in the rain or under really harsh conditions. When we practiced and it was raining, I mean, practice be over and we're all running out, diving in puddles, you know, playing tackle-the-man football. Our coach would get upset with us because we'd take a chance on hurting ourselves, but I mean, it was just fun. That was the thing to do.
And as the skies opened above them, the Gorillas slammed the door on Fox's vaunted offense.
So when we went back out second half and they fumbled 5 times. And then we come back and held them to 0 in the second half.
But while the defense held their ground, the Gorilla offense couldn't find the end zone. Late in the third quarter, Picher finally had a chance to get the ball across the goal line, but ended up facing a 4th and 2 from the Fox 3-yard line. Collier called timeout to dial up a dive play for Shell Henry. That's when the Gorillas experienced a bit of divine intervention.
Sammy, our fullback, went through the hole. Shell went through. He was right on the end zone. He gets hit, and he fumbles.
Play was a lead where Sammy was supposed to be lead blocking for me. Why he was behind me when I fumbled, nobody will ever know, other than it was meant for us to win that game.
Well, Sammy had already blocked somebody and turned sideways, and the ball bounced up right in his hands.
Landed in Sammy's hands, and he walks in the end zone.
Right there, Sammy's supposed to be in blocking, and he's right there catching the ball and going in and scoring, and we're looking around like, what happened?
That's destiny, man. It was meant to be, you know.
I don't know exactly how it happened. I've watched film, and I still can't figure out what happened. God had to have something to do with it.
As it turned out, Freeman's improbable touchdown was all the Gorillas would need. Fox's offense could make no headway in the fourth quarter, crippled by the muddy turf, the onslaught of rain, and the spirited Picher defense.
they sustained a long drive, they would be fumbling or throw an interception or whatever they did, penalty or whatever.
And they were driving on us. And I don't remember who caused the fumble, but I remember Brian Deathridge landed on it. And when he jumped up, the game was over.
When the clock hit 0, Picher ruled Class 1A.
I went down to my knees, and our center, who was our other linebacker with me, Philip Seaman, plowed me. I was down on my knees like, oh gosh, we did it. And boom, he hits me and throws me back. And it's like everybody was a dog pile.
People that traveled traveled many miles to watch the game that we didn't even know that was out there hugging us after the game like they'd known us our whole life, that was from Picher.
I think that Fox underestimated us, being just a bunch of rednecks from Picher, Oklahoma, because they knew they were a lot faster than us.
It's been 41 years I've been in coaching. And out of the 41 years, I haven't been to the finals since. So, I mean, that tells you something about getting that far and going that far. And for these young men to accomplish something like that, it was just unbelievable.
But as is the norm in small-town Oklahoma, the focus quickly shifted to the next season's sport, even in the wake of the state championship.
You start in August, you play football, you transition to basketball, and you play baseball and run track at the same time. I mean, it's just what we did.
There's about 15 minutes, but it looks like we might have a few people from this area. But like I said, I didn't know about Picher, Oklahoma until just a couple days ago. But the pictures I saw, there's like no green, and this is one I hadn't watched. I find it interesting. Hope you are too.
It's just what it was. Everybody did it. If you didn't play basketball, you were going to weight meets. If you didn't play baseball, you ran track. If you didn't run track, you played baseball. I missed the Friday nights. I missed the camaraderie with the coaches. Brian Miller. I'll put $100 on it. That guy led the state in block punts our senior year.
35 years later, their town and their school no longer exist. But the glory of that magical run in 1984 will never wane. It remains a unifying force for those who called Picher home.
There is a reason why we won the state championship. And I really feel like the reason why God knew that Picher wasn't going to be anymore. And he wanted to give us something to remember us by.
Dad.
You would feel welcome to come to Picher, Oklahoma.
You have to worry about your kids after school if you wasn't going to be home from work, because the neighbors take care of them.
Picher, America, the most polluted spot in the world, and here I am. I wouldn't change a thing.
It's truly a melancholy experience to walk around and look at the specter of such a beloved town. But it's our responsibility to see the whole picture. We start in the town square.
I'm willing to bet that this right here was damaged in the tornado. This kind of damage could only have been done by a tornado.
Yeah, look at the tire. Torn to pieces. Next stop, Picher Cardin High School, where all but a single door is locked or bolted shut. The interior could only be described as haunting.
I don't know what to think, man.
We're greeted by a welcome change as we make our final stops. For the first time all weekend, the sun peeks out from behind the clouds.
So this is what's left of the old Picher Mining Museum. Now this museum was actually destroyed by arson in 2015. So you can see the charred remains of the foundation and the woodwork in the house. All that's really left is the brick and the concrete foundation. Everything else burned.
And the museum wasn't the only structure in Picher that fell victim to suspicious fire.
Yeah, so there were actually two iconic buildings here in Picher that were destroyed within the span of a year. One was the mining museum, and then the other was the Baptist church in Douthit.
As the sun begins to set, we make our way back to the heart of Picher.
This used to be backyards, basically. We're walking along what was once a city block. You had houses sitting on these concrete pads, these trees lining the fences.
Nearly all of the residences in Picher have been torn down, but several houses still stand in one neighborhood.
It just looks like a regular house. Sink, room for a stove, fume hood, back porch here.
With their town reduced to rubble and ruins, those who called Picher home still harbor resentment, especially toward the federal buyout process.
Like I say, some of those people were scared to death. They thought they were going to cut off their electric, cut off their water, and they had no place to live. The ones that weren't in the tornado.
they started saying, well, you will not have electric, you will not have water, you will not have sewer. And then I got scared.
The government essentially offered these families a sum of money to move away and start a new life.
I laughed at first. I'm just like, I heard the lead poisoning and all the stuff, and I'm thinking, I swam in those places. I rode motorcycles when I was a kid. I slid down our chat piles, and I've eaten more gravel than, I'm just like.
You can live in a place like this, as all these people proved for decades.
Do you think that the move out was necessary?
No.
Why?
Well, the way I look at it is the mining fields are from, I believe they started somewhere in the Miami area, and they go clear to the Joplin area, and there's undermining all the way through. So why would it just be one target area?
Above all, there's one thing that the residents of Picher want the world to know. They loved their town. They led wonderful lives, and plenty of the demeaning narratives surrounding their town are exaggerated or simply untrue.
So the issue of contaminated water here in Picher was actually cleaned up pretty quickly as far as drinking and hygiene goes. This water is actually drinkable, and that's because as soon as they realized that the water sources in the town were contaminated, they drilled new wells to circumvent the contamination. So this water is actually perfectly safe to drink. So I will.
Braver than me.
I get aggravated when I see or hear things that are not accurate, or I just like to see people be open-minded about it and not just think it was a cesspool, because it wasn't. A lot of good people here, a lot of good things here.
If you've never been here and you've never lived here, you just probably will never know.
Didn't drink and smoke. We just had fun. The summers, we all played ball together. It was just a year-round thing. It was just always fun. I never grew up bored in Picher, Oklahoma.
We're proud people.
He kind of looks like Troy Aikman.
Before we leave Picher, we've got one final stop to make. I'm sorry, but I guess this is just where our journey has to end.
No, I wouldn't drink that water either.
Marky Thune, Baylor Hurst coming at you. Welcome to a chat pile. I don't question that the people who essentially condemned this town because of the environmental catastrophe knew what they were talking about. But at the same time, I can't imagine, just looking at this stuff, how it's so toxic. It's just gravel.
No, the alkali comes from chat. The ponds that we swim in had alkali in them because it would run off of the chat piles down into the pond. It didn't seem to hurt us.
Chat piles. I mean, I climbed up on chat piles all my life.
My legs are on fire.
I'm breathing heavy. I can see how that 1984 team won the state championship if they were running up and down these every day. So I'll tell you what, this is a workout.
If you were a kid in Picher, don't you think you would have been playing on this stuff too?
Oh, 100%. Maybe your first inclination is to think, okay, maybe they're just being chauvinistic about their hometown, but this actually looks like it would be a really fun environment to grow up in, honestly.
It's very unique, and I know people have said, we don't understand, we don't understand why you're like that, but it was a unique thing, and it really is. It is unique.
The walk down's much easier than the walk up.
Can you imagine being 12, 13, 14 and just walking around and saying this? Look at how beautiful this is.
It was an amazing place, and now it's just completely gone.
It's like losing a loved one. That's how the best way I can describe it. It's like losing a loved one. The devastation and the pain is there, but as the years go by, you adjust and you move on.
You stand there on that field or in that gym, and you think about what a mecca it was for a town of this size. And something about it being empty and deserted just strikes you.
So much life happened here, and now there's just nothing.
I'm still a little bit bitter. I'm sad and I'm bitter that it happened. Wish, we do a lot of, in our family, we do a lot of what ifs. What if that group of kids had stayed together? What if our boys had graduated from here? They didn't get to graduate from here, and they would have.
I still don't understand. We haven't had any cave-ins to speak of. I mean, we've just been around this place forever.
Home is home. It doesn't matter where it is. It doesn't matter what's around it. It doesn't matter what other people think of it.
Getting out of high school, I thought, I want away from this, get away from this. Joined the military, went to San Diego, California. I couldn't wait to get out. The whole time I was there, I couldn't wait to go back. I missed my home. It's always been home. And I think that's what everybody felt when they came here.
we don't even have class reunions here. We don't have homecomings. You know, there's no more football games to come to, no basketball games. Like I said, we used to have 5 or 6 track meets a year. Now look at this place.
I used to be able to ride through this town on a bicycle. I could have done it blindfolded and told you where it was at.
I always just want to turn and go this way to come home. And I can't. And that's what's hard.
And yeah, the ecosystem's wrecked here. But the physical, the geographical, that's not all there is to a community. And I don't think there's any better evidence of that than the people we met and the things we saw here in Picher.
Every resident that ever lived there has Picher in their heart. And so it's really funny. You cannot destroy that. You cannot destroy it. And my hope is that never goes away.
All the stories that you hear are terrible and bad. And don't tell the true story of what everybody went through. I mean, not only us, but our kids.
There's deep grief when you have to leave home when you don't want to. There's the feelings that happen when you shut the door for the last time for many folks.
You know, Picher was always a proud community. And I think, you know, that pride still shines through in the people today. And, you know, one of the saddest things that ever crossed my mind is once that last generation is gone, you know, who's going to carry that on, you know, because, you know, it's going to happen. There's going to come a point in time where there's no one left from Picher.
All the more reason why the story of Picher, Oklahoma needs to be told.
Why it happened, you know, everybody has their own reason, logic behind all that, and now it's just tough. It's gone. I mean, whose town disappeared? You know, I've got 2 boys, and I said, you guys need to watch what's going on because you're never going to see this again.
You know, if you drove past today and you didn't realize what those chap piles were, you would have had no idea that this is a mining town. Because again, we're in Oklahoma. We're in the foothills of the Ozarks. You don't drive through this region and think this is mining territory.
This story needs to be out there, that there are still damaged places in this country and in this world that can be repaired, but that have been damaged by industrial processes.
I like to think of myself as an optimist. I like to think that if we work together, that we can make a real difference. And I think there's some evidence that is happening. We are making progress.
It's not our job to tell the story. It's the residents, the people that lived this experience, that should tell the story. And I think they did.
That was quite different, wasn't it? Yeah, a lot of people still live in their hometowns. You know, that's one thing. Even the Panhandle. You know, there's 4th, 5th, even further generations living on their family's properties. So, I mean, that's sad. But I hadn't seen it. And to go live every day to bring you something, you surely don't want to just sit here and listen to me talk, right? So I'm just trying to go around. If you have something special, even good about Oklahoma that you want me to share, I'll be glad to share it. Again, you know, I made a deal. I'd try to go live every day for you. As far as views, that don't matter to me, and subscribers, that don't matter to me. I want a safe place for you. That's it. If I show something that you don't like, you know, you're not going to hurt my feelings if you step away for the night. But I can't have you commenting on the creators that I share, and I always share their link. It's because you don't like them. I wouldn't want somebody doing that to me, and so I can't allow that. So, with that said, man, I feel sorry for the people in Picher. Or Picher. Picher. Did I say Picher? Am I saying that right? Picher, Oklahoma. Sad. You know, every day I sit here and I'm like, okay, so there's nothing new on the case. I want to have some kind of content, you know? So here I am. And again, there might be somebody out there, this is the only contact they have for the day. And this case has really upset them. All of us are upset about the Veronica and Jillian case. And all the cases that seem to be coming with it. Like it's opened up a lot. So, I'm not trying to be testy or mean or anything, but yeah, if I show a creator you don't like, I'm not gonna hurt my feelings if you leave, for the night. But please don't dog the people we show, because then that don't look good on me that I showed something that somebody else might not like. I look 2 hours. Now I did see, so somebody's close to where he's started his ministry at that church. I too would like to go visit that church. I think he told me it was 4 hours from Omaha. I go to Omaha quite often. And I think he said like 4 hours to the west from Omaha. I'd have to look it up again. I'll forever remember him. And this horrible story. Like it'll never be out of my life. Yeah, I mean, I don't even mind the good Oklahoma stories, I did see where Oklahoma, Toby Keith, they're talking about putting the actual putting pictures of him on the Sooners football field. I know you guys love your football there. Have you guys seen that? Where Toby Keith was a big supporter of OU football, and they're talking about putting in the corners of the football field pictures of him. I find that interesting too. I'm not a Boomer Sooner fan, but with that saying, it is what it is. I'm not a hater of them by any means. But you are going to the SEC, which don't make me very happy.
2 News Oklahoma Sports.
That's the only time of year. That's the only time of year me and my boy don't talk. We ain't gonna talk about it. Y'all know who I'm picking. I'm picking the Sooners, buddy.
Yeah, with Toby Keith, there was never any doubt about that. As big a Sooner fan as there was, and Sooner Nation mourning the loss of country music legend, Oklahoma legend, Toby Keith. And welcome into sports, everybody. In the world of country music, he was as big a star as there ever was, but Keith had an everyman quality about him, and for decades now, it has resonated with sports fans here in the Sooner State. When it came to the passion he had for these games we play in his favorite team, he was just like us. Keith, a fixture at OU sporting events for years. Big football games, sure, but also basketball, softball, baseball, just about anything in which the Sooners competed. OU Athletics Director Joe Castiglione posting a note of remembrance to social media today. Quote, he was as authentic as they come and did more for people than anyone will ever know. Rest high on that big mountain, T. From Brent Venables, we are all better for knowing Toby, an amazing man who gave to so many. Rest in peace, brother. Bob Stoops, of course, a close friend of Keith's. He was accompanied by Toby at TU's season opener here in Tulsa last fall. And 1 year ago, Keith and Barry Switzer showed up to Eskimo Joe's after a Bedlam basketball game, even in enemy territory. He was the life of the party.
With my 6-shooter, riding my pony on a cattle drive. You ain't singing any young girl's heart. Just like King Roy, singing those campfire songs. Oh, I should have been a cowboy.
He did love his singing. I agree.
You ain't singing. I love it. Many years ago, Keith became a good friend of Tulsa's own Wayman Tisdale when the former NBA star passed away in 2009. Keith quickly penned the song Crying for Me, or Wayman's song, and performed it at OU basketball's next home game. We leave you now with a bit of that performance. Toby Keith was 62 years old.
While writing you this goodbye song, I found a tear. I'm gonna miss that smile. Gonna miss you, my friend. Even though it hurts the way it ended up, I do it all again. So play it sweet in heaven, 'cause that's right where you wanna be. I'm not crying 'cause I feel so sorry for you. I'm I'm crying for me.
That's sad. Anyway, supposedly they're going to put pictures of him in the corners of the stadium. I wonder if they have. Yeah, you know, my friend actually drives the bus for him. We were talking about this one day. And when Toby Keith first started out, he would go to Hutchinson, Kansas, to the bar there. And this is when I was married to the U.S. Marshal. And we'd go hang out in the bus with him. And he was just here, I don't know, right before COVID. And I'd never met his wife. And he had his wife with him, and it was a big old baseball thing we had going on here. And then he was at the casino, he was playing blackjack, and he got a little drunk. He had a few too many solo cups, and he was singing karaoke in the Tin Lizard Lounge, which was pretty fun. But with that said, we're an hour 24 minutes in. You got any ideas of something? You know, you can let me know. Hit me up. Message me at something for me to show that you want everybody to see about Oklahoma. I have no problem doing that. So, with that being said, we're going to end this live. Be your best you. Love one another. And all we can do is hope for the best. You know what I mean? And keep on trying to get justice for Jillian and Veronica. Red Solo Cup, I fill you up. Let's have a party. Proceed to party. We're going to play one of his last songs he did. So. Crazy, huh? Weird to see him gone. I think everybody liked Toby Keith, honestly. Okay, hold on. This is it. This is going to be the going out. We're out of here. Everybody have a good night. And yes, be your best you. It's the best you can do is be your best you.